How you all doing, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 9 4 key game picks. Before we talk about Week number 9, I don't even know where to begin in my thoughts from Week number 8, but I probably should start off with this, really, right now. I just got one question in it. What is going on with the 49ers? 3-game losing streak. Obviously, the one that hurt the most yesterday, really, the one that hurt the most, really was definitely last weekend. Losing to a Bengals team I think that they finally turned the corner. I start to wonder maybe if a couple of factors here. Is Brock Purdy, is there really something wrong with Brock Purdy? Is he just in a funk, or or there could be some injury that he's not saying, or what is the offense doing? I mean, there's a lot of question marks going on with this 49ers team. And it's not only just their offense, their defense has been a real surprise. I mean, they gave up nearly 283 yards of passing yesterday on Sunday, last Sunday against the Bengals. And that, to me, I'm not even sure if the 49ers have hit something on the road, if it's just a bump, or they just desperately needed that bye week, because the 49ers are on their bye this week. It couldn't come at a better time for them. And I don't know if maybe this is just the only bump on the road, but to be quite honest with you, this 49er team right now, they got a real tough schedule the rest of the way. And that NFC West title now is not a lock, because given the fact that the Seahawks beat the Browns last Sunday, the Seahawks are right on their tail, and that matchup for the Seahawks and 49ers now is a lot bigger than we anticipated, and that game on Thanksgiving night. So it's really for the 49ers. I don't know what's really going on and what the 49ers really need to do. But obviously, that showdown between them and the Seahawks now becomes even bigger. It's basically now for first place in the NFC West. And speaking of first place teams like the Cowboys and the Eagles, both teams, the Cowboys dominated the Rams, which was no surprise. The Rams are very terrible. The Eagles barely surviving the Washington Commanders, and really, it's not really a surprise, because given the history of all the teams in the NFC East, Philly and Washington have always duked it out. A lot of the games have been close, even during the lean years. They've always had, and despite the name changes Washington has had, I mean, it's always a battle between those two teams. And now the showdown we get finally now going into week number 9, though I think for a lot of people have been waiting for this matchup now to determine now who will definitely will have the edge in the NFC East. Even though it's only the first of 2 meetings, and the first one in Philadelphia, and it is going to be one of the games I will talk about. So yeah, tough to say how this showdown is going to be. Obviously, the injury bug has been really affecting a lot of players, and obviously the biggest one of all was Kirk Cousins, tore his Achilles. That was official at the time of this video. It is a torn Achilles from what I've been reading in the NFL media. It's just unfortunate for the Minnesota Vikings that Kirk Cousins is out for the season, and he's really turned the corner after they lost the first 3 games of the season, and it looked like the Vikings were finally turning the corner and definitely be fighting for a playoff spot. But now with no Kirk Cousins, even if they get Jefferson back, who's going to be the quarterback of that team is to be determined. Because really right now, given the fact that the Lions now have the stranglehold now in the NFC North division after they beat the Raiders on Monday night, it's really tough to say now for the Vikings if they can fight for a playoff berth now. There's too many things that went on. I don't even want to talk about the Jets-Giants. That game was the worst game so far this season. I need to get into my Week 9 picks, and let's get to it, shall we? Because these are big games coming up this weekend. All right, let's begin with key game number 1. It's the Dolphins versus the Chiefs in Frankfurt, Germany. This is one of the next international games. And I will say to anybody who's in Frankfurt, Germany and all that, this is going to be one great football game they're getting. The Chiefs are 2.5-point favorite, and it would not surprise me going into kickoff in Germany that number will go to 2, maybe 1.5. Tua was 30 of 45, 324 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a big victory over the Patriots last Sunday. Now, Mahomes had the flu before the game against the Broncos, and the Broncos did end up beating them. And I'm not even going to get into what I think of if the Chiefs are finally going to be having some problems here, because I don't think so. I think it's just one bump on the road for the Chiefs. They know this game's important. They know the Dolphins are no joke. Mahomes was 24 of 38, 241 yards, There was no touchdown passes because the Chiefs only scored 9 points in that game, but 2 interceptions. You got to wonder about this Miami offense and the way Tua has brought about in Tyreek Hill. Now, there's going to be a little bit of question marks for Tyreek Hill, given the fact he actually was banged up against the Pats. I don't know how healthy he's going to be in this game against the Chiefs, and you know for certainty that Tyreek Hill wants nothing to do than to embarrass the Chiefs. Embarrass the Chiefs in this football game. But given how the Chiefs' defense, minus what happened against the Broncos, they really have come alive. Their defense has really stepped up. They've done a much better job defensively towards this point of the season, given the fact that their defense struggled in the first part of the season. It's really a toss-up here. This game could not be more of a 50-50 game here. And I would say that defense-wise, the Chiefs kind of slightly, I would say it's on par with the Dolphins. I would lean it towards the Chiefs, but I think they're about evenly matched. It's really more on offense that I consider the Chiefs I would say more have the better offense in this. But it is not a sure pick here. This is not a sure pick of who wins this football game, because this is going to be a great football game, and Germany's going to be lucky to have a good game. I think it's going to be a good game. It wouldn't surprise me if this is a shootout here. But I got to make a pick here. I'm not sure about this. I'm still going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they bounce back here. I think there's no way, no how I could see them losing 2 in a row, given the talent on offense that the Chiefs have, even though I know they would love to have Tyreek Hill back. But I think the Chiefs barely squeak out a victory against the Dolphins here. I expect this to be an offensive slugfest in this one here. I think it'll be no question, this is definitely going to be a very, very close game here. But I just think, it's hard for me to go against the defending Super Bowl champions here, and given the fact that they're on a mission, they want that home field again, knowing full well that they want another Super Bowl. And I know Miami's doing everything they can to build up a Super Bowl contender, but until they get past the Chiefs, I just think the Chiefs are a better team in this matchup here. I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs here at -2.5. Chiefs over the Dolphins. All right, key game number 2. This is a real battle of the birds here. Not the one we saw last week against the Cardinals and the Ravens, but talking about the Ravens, this is the Seattle Seahawks versus the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are a 5.5-point favorite in this one here. And I would probably say it might go a little bit lower, might be 5, might be 4.5 in this one here. Now, Geno Smith really did struggle against the Browns last week, because the Browns' defense actually is not a joke, but given the fact that offensively, with no Deshaun Watson, the Browns really screwed up last week. They should have beaten the Seahawks, and they didn't. Geno Smith was 23 of 37, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Now, Lamar Jackson had a pretty decent game against the Cardinals, even though that onside kick they really should have won by a much bigger margin. He was 18 of 27, 157 yards, and 1 touchdown. This is definitely going to be a much closer game for the Ravens, probably their closest game in a while, because Seattle's defense is pretty average, but I would say they'll find a way to get to Lamar Jackson. And I gotta wonder what's going to happen out of Geno Smith if he doesn't create any turnovers here, because really the turnovers were a factor in almost a loss for the Seahawks last week. This is another 50-50 game. I look at it in this one here, but the way that the Ravens have done a fantastic job in the last few games. I mean, it's hard to go against them in this one here, because I just think Baltimore has a little bit more of a better offense than Seahawks do. But when it comes to defense, I would say they're both on par. Defense-wise, I see they're pretty much on par, but offense-wise, I give a slight edge to the Ravens here. This one should be a good one here for a battle of the birds here. I'm not going to go against the Ravens here. I think the Ravens have the much better offense in this one here. I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens at -5.5. I just think, to me, Lamar Jackson hasn't been this healthy in a long time, and it's going to be a close game. I can see this being a very close game, but I like the Ravens in this one here. I think the Ravens will beat the Seahawks probably more than less by a field goal. I could see this more or less like it's going to be a field goal. It definitely comes down to Tucker on a game-winning field goal, and I'm going to stick with my pick here on this one here. I think the Ravens beat the Seahawks here. Ravens over the Seahawks. Key game number 3. the Buffalo Bills versus the Cincinnati Bengals. This is kind of hard for me to talk about this because given the fact that we were going into last season, everybody knows what happened in Cincinnati and DeMar Hamlin, and there's going to be a lot of emotions going into this football game if both these two teams are going to be. I think it's more on the Bills side. Given the fact the Bills are, other than emotions, the Bills have really struggled. Both sides of the ball. They've been relying so much on Josh Allen offensively, and then their defense really has given up so much offensive yardage. And keep in mind, they almost gave up a Hail Mary to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the end of the football game last Thursday. Josh Allen was 31 of 40, 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And given the fact that the Bengals have really starting to turn the corner here, Burrow was 28 of 32, 283 yards, and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in a huge victory over the 49ers. Bengals are a 3-point favorite in this one here, and it will probably go to 2.5, I would think. There's going to be a lot of emotions in this football game, and it's hard to say. I kind of give an edge to the Bengals here because given the fact that they're playing much more better football than the Bills have, and lately, I don't know what we're getting out of this Bills team because the Bills, to me, have been a disappointment. But I can't really give much excuse for the injuries and all that. I know a lot of them have been devastating so far this season. And I got to wonder if they're going to be ready for this one, too. The Bengals they know that the Bengals have been, now, when it comes to the playoffs, have been a playoff rival to them. If I look at what Burrow and Chase have done, that dynamic duo that they have, they're just lighting it up offensively here. And given how the Bills have defenses really struggled in this one here, I don't think nothing's going to change out of this football game. I'm definitely going towards the Bengals in this one here. I think the Bills' troubles are going to continue the rest of the way until they can find any sort of motivation or if they can get back healthy, given that their defense has been really banged up. Offense-wise, they've really struggled, and they've been relying too much on Josh Allen. And given that the Cincinnati offense has really come alive in the last few games, there's no question. You got to go with the Bengals here at -3. No question about that one. I'm picking the Bengals to beat the Bills in this one here. A lot of emotions will definitely be in this football game, given what happened last season. And I think it's going to be too much for the Bills to overcome. I like the Bengals in this one here. It wouldn't be surprised if it's a close football game, but I think the Bengals are much better, are a little bit of a better football team than the Bills are. I'm picking the Bengals over the Bills. And finally, the one I've been wanting, a lot of people have been waiting for this matchup. Key game number 4, the Cowboys versus the Eagles. The Eagles are a slight favorite at -3. And no question, that number will go to 2.5, maybe 2, maybe even 1.5. Dak Prescott, 25 of 31, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception in a big dominant victory over the Rams. Eagles with Jalen Hurts, 29 of 38, 319 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and really a offensive struggled victory against the Commanders. It boils down to a couple of factors here. Which offense doesn't make the turnovers in here? I definitely think for this football game, the one key point and one key factor is going to come down to this. It's going to come down to turnovers. Which football team doesn't make a huge mistake? The Cowboys, we know their defense has been pretty good. But that loss to the Cardinals is daunting. And it does boil to the point where, and then of course they got dominated by the 49ers before the 49ers started taking a dump in their pants. It just boils down to that point. Which team does not make the turnovers here? Look, both offense-wise, they're on par. Defense-wise, the Cowboys have a slight edge on defensively, but you know Jalen Hurts, he knows how to make plays. And that Philly shove made a fumble last week, and now you got to wonder if Dallas knows what to do with that Philly shove, because really that play has been annoying to everybody in the league right now, and they do it perfectly. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're successful in doing that against this Dallas defense. It is a very tough pick. This is for control of the NFC East, even though the Eagles have a slight edge, even though if they end up losing. Very tough to say, because no question about this, whoever wins this game will have control of the NFC East for the time being. Tough pick here. You can't go wrong with who wins this football game here. It's a 50-50 pick. I'm not sure who wins this football game. It's definitely going to be a great football game. It's definitely going to come down. I think it won't be high scoring. I think it's going to be like really who makes the key mistake in this football game. It would be like a 20-17 type of football game. No question. This is going to be a very close game here. I just think the Eagles offense and the way the dynamics and the way that Jalen Hurts can make plays, as long as he doesn't turn it over. I like the Eagles. I like give a slight edge to the Eagles here, and I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles here. Until Dallas can beat them in Philly, I like the Eagles here. I like the Eagles to barely beat the Cowboys in this one here. This should be a great football game. It's a 50-50 pick. I'm not sure who's going to win this football game here, but I'm definitely picking the Eagles to beat the Cowboys here. I think, to me, the Eagles and Hurts will, for sure, they're going to make plays. I know they've been waiting for this football game all season. They know they're the two best teams in that division. And I think, to me, the Eagles will barely squeak out a victory over the Cowboys. It should be a good football game on Sunday. I'm going to go with the Eagles in this one here. It's a 50-50 pick. You can't go wrong in this one here. It's hard to say who wins this football game. I'm picking the Eagles here. I think the Eagles will barely beat the Cowboys. All right, everybody, that wraps up my 4 key game picks for week number 9. Please check the description below for all of my week 9 picks. I'll see you guys next week when I make my picks for week 10. Take care and enjoy your NFL weekend.